The story begins in a world filled with countless species of life living amongst humans, birds, beasts, some interesting fish, and even fairies and spirits. But the being that reigns above them all is the mighty dragon. In this world, most living beings possess a home that well suits their needs, and understand the importance of having a home they can call their own. Somewhere in a cave, a slime couple is eager to move into their new home. The man selling it, who is actually a demon lord, persuades them into buying it, showing off all of its enticing features, and watches eerily as the eager couple signs the contract. Elsewhere, we're introduced to our main protagonist, a cowardly red dragon named Letty, who's just been disowned by his parents after failing to guard the egg. One night, he fell asleep while he was supposed to be watching it, resulting in a hunter being able to sneak in and steal it. Letty was so pathetic he didn't even confront the hunter to get it back because he was afraid of getting hurt. And when his father came home, he immediately disowned him, calling him a disgrace to all dragonkind. Now, he's left to fend for himself for the first time in a world full of mysteries. But unlike other dragons, Letty is docile, weak, and overall severely lacking in his abilities. Upon looking at his ID card, he wonders how the hell he's going to survive with stats this bad. He thinks if only he had a nest he could hide in, and just then he has a eureka moment. Letty remembers the story about the 3 little trolls who were the weakest of mobs, but built an impenetrable fortress and were able to live out their days unharmed. So with that, Letty heads off alone to find his new perfect home. However, along the way, the helpless little twerp gets captured and taken to Zoloto Mine, and wakes up to find himself in a cage surrounded by cheering dwarfs, rejoicing over capturing a dragon. 30 minutes earlier, Letty came across a dwarf upon searching for the dwarven city. However, the greedy dwarves immediately thought Letty must be there to steal their gold, and before he knew it, he ended up trapped in a cage. With tears in his eyes, Letty promises that he just wanted them to help build a house, as he heard dwarves were really good at it. He bursts into tears, screaming that he just wants to go home, and the dwarfs stop and stare at him like, "Bro, you are a dragon, grow some balls." After realizing the sad excuse for a dragon he is, the leader of the dwarves says they will build him a house, but in return, he wants to make some dragon mats out of him since they sell for hefty prices. The leader starts off by saying he needs his horns, and then his tail, going on to list every part of his body with a sinister undertone. Letty becomes frantic, trying to think of a way to escape, and remembering how greedy the dwarves are, he tricks them into thinking that someone is stealing their gold, giving him just enough time to escape into the woods, where he happens to run into the hunter that stole the egg. However, at that moment, the dwarves chasing him catch up and get into a fight with the hunter, giving Letty a small window to get away. After running for hours, Letty finds himself crying alone in the forest as he feels so hopeless. But just then a couple of harpies appear who feel sorry for Letty. He tells them his story while they comfort him, and after they offer to let him stay with them, as their nest is quite empty since the younglings left. The harpies show him the nest at the top of the tree, but Letty, being the hopeless dragon he is, can't even fly yet, so he has to climb the entire thing using his claws. After reaching the top, the harpies try teaching him how to use his wings to fly and speak words of encouragement to him. Letty jumps off and glides through the air, putting a smile on his face and making the harpies proud. All for about 3 seconds as he falls flat on his face, forgetting the most important rule, to flap his damn wings. The harpies laugh while Letty sulks in shame and embarrassment. However, they come up with an idea for him, and suggest he heads into the valley beyond, where he can find a giant oak tree inhabited by goblins that may be able to help him. The next thing we see is that it's nightfall, and Letty hanging from a tree by his foot upside down. The goblins see Letty as a juicy dragon steak, but upon mentioning the harpies, the goblins change their attitude and release him as their major simps for the harpies, and don't want to disappoint them. After sharing his story with the goblins, they encourage him to carry on his journey, and to stop being such a wuss because he's a whole dragon. Letty carries on with his journey and ends up at a place called Saharajan, where he's offered a place in their home. However, Letty F's around and finds out he can't breathe underwater, or even swim, and so he declines the offer. Letty is then advised to head east near the Great Yggdrasil tree, where he'll find a great architect named Diria, who even helped them build Saharajan. Letty thanks him and departs, running into some gnomes along the way who point him in the right direction. After some time, Letty finally arrives at his destination. However, just then he's encountered by a team of heroes, who instantly see him as a threat since he's a dragon. Just as they draw their weapons, a mysterious being approaches holding a special book and swiftly deals with the heroes' team. After witnessing this legendary show of power, Letty faints, but after a while he regains his consciousness as he wakes up from a nightmare. Letty introduces himself to the gray-haired elf and explains that he was told there was a great architect in this area. The elf then reveals that he is who Letty has been searching for, the one and only Diria. Letty freezes up in disbelief and then profusely begs Diria to help him find a home. As someone who has been in the real estate business for centuries, Diria tells Letty that he has 3 options. A. He can build his own home. B. Purchase an existing house. Or C. Simply rent from a property owner. Diria reveals that he's both a registered architect and a licensed real estate agent, and with so many options, Letty's brain begins to disco dance, probably thinking that Diria is Jesus's second coming. But that all comes crashing down when he hands Letty his card, and upon inspecting it, Letty sees that it says Demon Lord written on it, which Diria admits is one of his occupations as well. Diria asks Letty which path he wants to go down in regards to acquiring his new home. Letty reveals that he wants a cozy little cottage, but Diria isn't sure something like that could accommodate someone of his size. While designing the cottage, Diria informs Letty that if he lives in a house like this, then he will be as good as dead. He further tells him that heroes could just waltz right in and use a sword to isekai him straight to the pearly gates. Upon hearing this, Letty wonders how many more humans are out there cosplaying as heroes. Diria explains that whereas hunters are specialized in hunting non-humans, heroes are bloodthirsty killing machines, downright scums who rob, murder, pillage, and even assist with political coups. Sighing, Diria tells a scared Letty that it's time they start working on finding him a home. With a quick teleportation spell, Diria takes them in front of a temple. He briefs Letty on the property, revealing that it has been used by many powerful beings and contains many anti-hero countermeasures. Upon entering the temple for an inside tour, Diria warns Letty to be mindful of his steps, but Letty, being as thick-headed as a whale sandwich, walks into a trap and finds himself tumbling down. As Diria arrives on the scene, he informs Letty that they're in a subterranean dungeon equipped with anti-hero traps. Despite Letty's protests, Diria insists on giving him a full house tour, and reassures him to have no fear as resurrection spells happen to be one of his specialties. Eventually, the pair end up at a healing pool and Letty instantly goes in for a swim. Unfortunately, there's no cure for stupidity as Letty quickly ends up drowning. After getting out, Diria tells Letty that it's time for him to return to the top floor. As Letty begins to climb back up, a group of wandering heroes spot him and try to attack. However, Diria comes to shield him, saving his bacon once again. Unable to snack on some dragon meat for their gains, the heroes angrily raise their crossbows to try and kill Diria. Without breaking a sweat, the Demon Lord quickly takes care of the heroes who are no match for him, while Letty makes it back to the top. Upon seeing Letty all worn out, Diria pets him and says that he did a good job, making Letty cry as he was never appreciated by his own father. For the next couple of days, Letty walks around like a wounded soldier. A concerned Diria asks if he's okay, but Letty assures him that his muscles have stopped cramping and wonders where their next destination lies. After a moment, Diria reveals that their next house is one heroes never go near, and if he chooses to live there, then he'll never feel lonely again. They arrive at the place and Letty looks at the house with a face of horror, but then he realizes it really is a house of horrors, named the Mansion of the Dead. Letty turns to leave, so Diria drags him by the tail, and explains that having ghosts as company is great since they will never ghost him. As Letty enters the mansion with Diria, a shiver runs down his spine. To make matters worse, Diria candidly tells Letty that multiple exorcisms in this house have failed. He then hands Letty a vacuum cleaner and informs him that since they'll be spending the night, he should use the vacuum cleaner in case of emergency. With that, the Demon Lord bids Letty sweet dreams and leaves the room. Seconds after Diria's departure, Letty encounters the kid from the Grudge movie. Scared out of his mind, Letty rushes out of the room. In the dimly lit hallway, he tries to find his way to Diria when he realizes that this is how black guys die first in horror movies. After receiving a flashlight from a ghost, Letty stumbles upon a room that looks worse than a keyboard warrior's basement. As Letty tries to go back, he finds an army of ghosts waiting for him. All out of options, he opens the door and faints upon seeing a terrifying ghost. With Letty out cold, the King of Ghosts tells Diria that he didn't expect a dragon to be such a pussy. Upon meeting the Ghost King named Samuel, Letty discovers that the ghosts were only attempting to say hello and welcome him. Meanwhile, Samuel reflects on the past, recalling Diria wandering alongside a dragon. Diria responds, stating that since he had a dragon for a companion in the past, perhaps this is why he has a soft spot for Letty. Gathering his wits, Letty tells Diria that he needs a home where he can relax a little easier, and understanding this, Diria promises to help Letty find a home to his liking. The next day, as Letty and Dirya resume their journey, Dirya asks Letty if he's comfortable with making a quick stop. Like an obedient dog, Letty agrees but asks Dirya the reason for their stop. The demon lord reveals that they need to stop by the crone's lair, which instantly causes Letty to shake with fear. In a pathetic voice, he asks Dirya if they must really stop by another scary place when Dirya reveals that since a homeless loser like him couldn't afford a bed, he had to borrow one from them. Remembering how they left the bed in the spooky mansion, Letty asks Dirya if they should return. The elf then pulls out a bag that remarkably looks a lot like Doraemon's pocket and tells the clueless dragon that his bag can hold any item, no matter how big. Upon reaching their destination, Letty and Dirya step into a dusty cave where they encounter 3 ugly old hags. Surprised by their appearance, Letty discovers from Dirya that these old ladies are the Grey Sisters, renowned for their skills in craftsmanship. The women greet Letty, explaining that they typically don't welcome newcomers, but since he looks like a flickering light bulb, they aren't threatened by him. The women guide Dirya and Letty through a hidden entrance, leading them into a grand room adorned with various items. Letty expresses his awe, and the sisters proudly declare that they possess everything one could desire, except for a method to transform Letty into a cool protagonist. As the curious dragon explores the showroom, Dirya shows him a door, revealing that the sisters are skilled in creating doors that are big enough to fit Americans. Observing the door, Letty realizes it lacks doorknobs. Dirya explains that the doorknobs are sold separately, and that by using different magic knobs, he will be able to travel to various locations. Thrilled at the idea of traveling without walking, Letty inserts a doorknob. However, he becomes anxious as the door opens to the city of dwarfs, who are all quite upset at the prospect of not having dragon soup. Noticing Letty's terrified expression, the sisters draw his attention to a door named the Gate of the Gallant Lady. As Letty gazes at the beautiful lady painted on the door, his heart begins to breakdance. Suddenly, the gallant lady speaks to him, startling Letty. Dirya explains that if Letty uses the magic word, the gallant lady will help him teleport anywhere in the world. However, if he takes too long, she will recite an embarrassing poem written by Letty himself. Since Letty is cursed with crappy luck, the gallant lady announces that time is up and proceeds to read aloud a poem Letty wrote about needing a dragon baddie by his side. Witnessing Letty cry out of utter cringe, Dirya takes pity on him and suggests he divert his attention to the fireplace. Instantly, Letty begins envisioning his future with the fireplace. However, his dreams shatter when Dirya reveals that the fireplace is incredibly heavy, and unless he consumes 10 Arnold Schwarzeneggers for breakfast, there is no way he will be strong enough to carry the fireplace to his new place. Adding on to his misery, the sisters remind Letty that he needs to have a home for him to enjoy the fireplace. Finding his 13th reason why, Letty slumps down in disappointment when Dirya asks him if he would like to build a new house. Excited by the idea, Letty and Dirya teleport to a hillside where Letty can easily jump off if life becomes too difficult for his tiny brain. Enjoying the scenery, Letty expresses his interest in building a house when he suddenly realizes he's broke as shit. Dirya assures Letty, suggesting that since he's useless alive, his organs could increase his value if he were to just roll over and die. Not wanting to die without clapping some dragon cheeks, Letty starts to sulk, prompting Dirya to inquire about the amount of money he has. Taking out his wallet, Letty hands it to the demon lord who finds a single tooth inside. Letty excitedly explains that if he puts the tooth under his pillow, a fairy will swap it for money. Unfazed as always, Dirya informs Letty that such things don't actually happen, just like how Santa Claus isn't real. Before Letty can go all emo on him, Dirya assures him that his financial problems can be solved later and takes out a blueprint for a house. Once Dirya explains the layout to Letty and receives his approval, he claps his hands and summons gnomes and big green ogres, revealing them to be his underpaid employees. With everything in place, the construction begins. Seeing everyone working, Letty attempts to help but fails miserably. This leads Dirya to wonder who peed in Letty's gene pool for him to be so pathetic and clumsy. However, being the compassionate demon lord he is, Dirya reassures Letty that Rome wasn't built in a day, and advises him to take it easy. After a week, Letty expresses immense gratitude to everyone for building his house. Dirya then informs him that they need to wait for heroes to arrive, explaining his plan of killing the oxygen thieves and selling their equipment. As Letty begins to worry, Dirya summons a trio of buffed up monsters. Initially terrified, Letty gets surprised when the monsters fawn over him, excited to see a real-life dragon. Dirya informs Letty that the monsters will serve as his live-in bodyguards, earning their keep by battling heroes, while the rest will go to the construction cost. Wishing Letty luck, Dirya departs, leaving Letty to enjoy his new house. However, trouble soon arrives in the form of heroes seeking a fight. Before battle can commence, one of the heroes recognizes Letty as the dragon who destroyed his companions, causing him to retreat. Overnight, Letty's reputation grows among otherworldly creatures, who begin seeking his assistance, hailing him as the Flame Dragon Lord. Feeling overwhelmed by his newfound title, Letty decides to leave for the supermarket, never to return. As he prepares to depart, he encounters Dirya, who questions why he's abandoning his house. Letty shares his story, explaining how his home has become a prime target for heroes seeking to explore and loot. He expresses his desire for peace and quiet. Moved by Letty's troubles, Dirya pledges to help him find the perfect home. Finding himself amidst the icy plains of the Alps, Letty comes to understand why many homeless people end up as fentanyl users. He notices Dirya covered in warm clothing and complains about feeling cold. Not wanting Peta to sue him for animal endangerment, the Demon Lord assures Letty that he has prepared winter clothing for him as well. Taking out his Doraemon pocket, Dirya gives Letty an outfit that transforms him into a big Machai ball. After being dressed right, Letty's brain starts to unclog. He asks Dirya why they're out in the middle of a big field of snow. The Demon Lord reminds him of his wish to live a secluded life, away from heroes and hunters, so what better place than the North Pole? Explaining further, Dirya reveals that the land price is cheap, which will save his wallet a workout. Letty's sweat drops as he realizes that the Demon Lord is kinda autistic and likes to take things to an extreme level. Wrapping up the conversation, Dirya shows Letty a low-budget documentary on the life of a Yeti and their habitat. After watching the film, Dirya tells Letty that if he wants a home, he needs to start hoeing hard. Confused, Letty asks if he has to work by himself. The Demon Lord reveals that since igloos do not require construction cost, he can start working himself. With Dirya's guidance and Letty's hard work, they manage to construct a modest igloo for Letty. Afterwards, Dirya warns Letty that the toughest aspect of living in isolation is survival. He instructs Letty to channel his inner Bear Grylls and give it his all for the next 3 days. Letty feels his heart drop as he senses the start of a new character development arc. Before he can whine further, Dirya shows him the peace sign and teleports the hell out. Alone and cold, Letty tries to find food for himself. Upon noticing a group of reindeers, Letty tries to unleash his inner predator but ends up becoming a prey himself. After multiple useless attempts, Letty decides that it's a good time to start dieting. However, another problem arises when Letty finds himself completely lost. As panic starts to settle in, Letty finds a big white Yeti behind him. Frightened, Letty wonders why a buffed-up monster is behind him when he's not even stuck in the washing machine. However, he quickly realizes that the monster means no harm as he invites Letty to his igloo. Upon entering, Letty finds Dirya preparing dinner. However, before Letty can settle in, he notices that Dirya has discarded his shirt, and the Yeti has also disrobed. To Letty's surprise, he then sees dwarfs and heroes, all completely naked, inside the igloo. Fearing that his meal would involve salty baby gravy of different kinds, Letty starts to panic. He then opens his eyes and realizes that it was all a freaky wet dream. As Letty resumes his search for food, he comes across a stranded egg. His mind begins to entertain thoughts of various dishes he could create with it, but he quickly shakes off the idea, recalling how his unfortunate journey started when a wet wipe stole his own egg. Turning away to continue his search for home, Letty suddenly realizes that the ice beneath him has cracked, and he is now drifting away from the land. While Letty shows mercy towards the helpless egg, not all beings are as kind-hearted. Soon, Letty finds himself confronted by a massive whale that swallows him whole in a matter of seconds. Regaining consciousness, Letty finds an ashy man hovering over him. After collecting his thoughts, Letty discovers that the man's name is Davy Jones. As Letty realizes that he's deep inside a whale, pun not intended, he begins to panic. Seeing Letty in distress, Davy consoles him and reveals a comfortable room inside the whale's stomach. He explains that since the whale swallows multiple Titanics here and there, he has a collection of items such as gems, eating utensils, cooking ingredients, and tea. Amazed by all the items, Letty decides to explore the whale house further. As he tours the laundry room, cooking area, and bathroom, Letty becomes increasingly impressed. Eventually, he agrees to stay with Davy for a while, appreciating the comfort and security provided within the whale's belly. After a good night's sleep, Letty discovers Davy sharpening his knife. A chill runs down his spine as he wonders if Davy is planning to eat him raw. Just then, Davy happily greets him, revealing that he's cooking breakfast for them. Realizing that he should watch less of those serial killer documentaries, Letty excuses himself to use the restroom. After breakfast, Letty informs Davy that he needs to leave, mentioning that someone is waiting for him. Understanding the urgency, Davy assists Letty in finding a way out. Taking quick action, they toss a barrel of pepper spray under the whale's nostrils, causing the whale to sneeze violently, which allows Letty to ride the momentum and escape from the whale's belly unharmed. Upon landing on a floating piece of ice, Letty encounters a seal. He attempts to tap into his animal instincts to hunt and feast on the seal, but fails miserably when the seal gives him a pleading look with its big puppy dog eyes. As Letty cries in frustration, the seal transforms into Diria, who reveals that this was all a test to see if he's fit to survive in the North Pole. Later, in his igloo, Letty's egg cracks open, revealing a bird-like creature. As the chick sees Letty, he addresses him as Papa, causing Letty to scream in protest that he's not even his child. The following day, Diria teleports Letty to a warmer location, mentioning that he knows of some communal housings that would suit him. Just then, Letty's chick emerges from his pouch, calling him Papa. Observing this, Diria comments that single fathers aren't as popular as single mothers in this era. Frustrated by Diris's teasing, Letty protests, exclaiming that he's not the father. Noticing how Diria doesn't believe him, Letty realizes that he needs to ring up Judge Judy for this case. Sighing, Diria then explains to the dragon that sometimes when a creature is born, it imprints on the first person it sees. However, feeling guilty and burdened, Letty asks Diria if it's okay for him to raise the bird. Hoping to ease Letty's doubts, Diria shares a story from many years ago when an explorer found an abandoned egg that hatched into a bird. Despite the explorer's attempts to return the bird to the wild, it continued to follow him around, eventually leading the explorer to accept the bird as his own. However, the story doesn't end there. After the explorer passes away, the bird, unable to comprehend the concept of death, refuses to carry on with its life. Many have said that the bird is still living alongside the explorer's corpse to this day. Hearing the scary story, Letty wets himself in fear. Diria further informs Letty that his chick belongs to a bird family which lives along rivers in the northern mountain region. Once the younglings enter adulthood, they become strong enough to summon a blizzard with just the flap of its wings. However, knowing he's a total muppet and will likely mess up, Letty tells Diria that if the chick stays with him, he'll end up as a degenerate. In an instant, Diria teleports them to a housing communication, revealing that perhaps he'll be able to find a parent more suited to raise his chick. Observing the place, Letty expresses his amazement at the infrastructure. Diria informs him that if he chooses to live in a community, it will be much easier on his wallet in comparison to living in an independent unit. Additionally, if he gets the shits at night, his neighbors will be there to help him. Before Letty can allow himself to dream, Diria quickly tells him that most of the houses aren't built for those with daddy long legs. Curious, Letty asks the demon lord why is that so. Diria reveals that since larger animals need more space to function, they rarely live in communal housing, so naturally, there's less demand. Their conversation is cut short by a group of wild heroes running after a couple of monsters. Letty asks Diria if they should intervene, but a gigantic monster bird appears and squishes the pesky intruders. Diria informs Letty that in such societies, the landlords take care of their tenants. After learning that the weaker tenants are protected by the strong landlords, Letty relaxes and promises the baby chick that he'll find him the best parents in the world, which, as we know, do not exist. With a new goal in mind, Letty follows Diria to an apartment owned by a pair of conjoined orthros. Letty curiously asks Diria if the pair is married. Diria reveals that they're actually siblings who failed to find love, so they ended up pretending to be married to each other. Realizing that this is an extreme case of Sweet Home Alabama, Letty shudders in horror. He then expresses to the two-headed creature his desire for a forever home for the young chick, but the orthros inform him that they can't adopt a baby due to noise restrictions. Assuring the orthros, Letty reveals that since the chick is young, he won't make much noise. However, on cue, the chick lets out a blood-curdling scream, causing a disaster. After quickly exiting the apartment, Letty and Diria approach many different creatures, but all in vain. While taking a quick breather, Diria asks Letty that he should just take care of the bird, but Letty shakes his head, revealing that the chick wouldn't want someone as pathetic and weak as him. Diria agrees with him but tells Letty that everyone with crappy parents have ended up becoming great comedians, so it'll be a win-win situation. Their conversation abruptly ends when a monster bear and its cubs arrive. Diria excuses himself and goes to chat with the bear, leaving Letty with the cubs. The cubs greet Letty warmly, mentioning that everyone has been talking about him and his chick. Suddenly, an ugly monster appears and demands that Letty hand over the chick. Letty's fatherly instincts kick in, as he attempts to protect both the chick and the bear cubs. Once Diria returns and informs the wicked monster that the dragon he's facing is known as the Flame Dragon Lord, the monster quickly retreats. Later, the demon lord commends Letty for being a good father and protecting the younglings. Overwhelmed with emotions, Letty decides to keep the chick and names it Pip. Having been traveling for so long, Letty cries to the demon lord how he has used up all the money he made by selling his pictures on Only Dragons. Like always, Diria remains cool as a cucumber and tells Letty that they will spend the day making some money. Curious about his job prospects, Letty asks Diria how he can offer his services. In response, the demon lord reveals that dragons have always been popular in the black market. However, not wanting to resort to selling his organs to pay for Pip's college tuition, Letty nervously asks Diria if there's anything he can do while still alive. Without wasting more breath on the stupid dragon, Diria teleports them to a trade market. Upon seeing the marketplace bustling with humans, Letty instinctively seeks a hiding place. But Diria assures him that in this free city, people don't discriminate based on species or nationality. He further reveals that due to the city's security, various merchants come to sell their products. Some offer their usual defense items and potions, while others deal in forbidden cucumbers, if you know what I mean. Not possessing the brains for being a capitalist boss, Letty tells Diria that the marketplace is a wretched place and turns to leave. However, before he could do so, Diria drags Letty by the tail and tells him that a broke loser like him shouldn't complain so much. Fearful of his life, Letty tries to protest, reminding Diria about the wretched heroes. Pointing at a cage full of heroes, Diria informs him that the marketplace doesn't allow schizo freaks who are off meds. After convincing Letty, Diria takes him to meet an owl named Amon for a job opportunity. However, Amon turns him down, stating that he doesn't hire newcomers without a letter of recommendation. Just as they turn to leave, Pip communicates something to Amon in bird language, which changes his mind. Amon informs Letty that Pip has put in a good word for him, so now he has to hire him. As his first job, Letty is assigned to cut blocks from trees and rocks. Wondering why someone would want blocks, Letty turns to the all-wise demon lord who reveals that many adventurers enjoy building homes or tools out of blocks of materials. After understanding everything, Letty gets to work, and after a full day of toiling away, he receives a single coin. Like a shrewd capitalist, Amon tells an upset Letty that if he wants to make more, then he needs to work faster and better. As Letty sobs about being unable to feed Pip, Amon takes pity on him and assigns Letty as a hotel receptionist. However, right on his first day, Letty scares away almost every customer. In the end, Letty returns to Amon, crying for a different job. After being told by Amon how he's a pain in the rear end, Diria steps up and tells Letty that he should find a job that only he can do. Following the demon lord, Letty curiously asks him what he has in mind. Diria then reveals that Letty can offer proxy services. Understanding the task, Letty meets up with his first client, Robert, an apprentice mage. Being a diehard furry, Robert's eyes start to sparkle upon seeing a dragon in front of him. After calming his excited danger noodle, Robert reveals his business. He tells Letty that he wants him to pretend like he summoned him. Once Letty agrees, Robert calls his friends to flex on them. However, when Letty appears, his friends remain unmoved. Sensing trouble, Pip yells with all his might, causing the mages to fall in terror. Confused by Pip's behavior, Letty learns from Diria that his baby bird just wanted to help his father. After receiving money, Letty tends to his next client while Diria looks after Pip. It is then a fatherless woman named Lilith approaches the demon lord in an attempt to riz him. She tells Diria that when she heard about a peculiar duo of an elf and a dragon, she knew it was him. Being an alpha male, Diria coolly reveals that he's house hunting with his dragon friend. This makes Lilith more desperate for Diria's white sauce, as she recalls an old memory of when he initially became the demon lord. As it turns out, Diria was selected as a demon lord through a lottery machine. However, having no interest in ruling over ugly abominations, Diria tries to reject the title. This surprises Lilith, who was once a young fortune teller. Curiously, she asks Diria what he wants and learns that the elf is just interested in reading encyclopedias about stupid animals. As Diria turns to leave, he's forcefully brought by the Dark Lord agency to the Demon Lord's tower for his inauguration. However, instead of sitting still, Dirya escapes, causing Godfrey, the Grand Chamberlain, and his goons to search for him all across the palace. Every time they try to reach Dirya, the elf unknowingly activates an anti-intruder spell, causing Godfrey and his men to suffer greatly. In the end, the agency allows him to leave. In present time, Lilith realizes that it'll take another 100 years for Dirya to commit to her, so she ends up leaving. Meanwhile, Letty earns his keep for the day and heads to wash up when a man approaches him. He asks Letty to help carry a few things over to a hut on the outskirts of town. Not having any concept of stranger danger, Letty agrees and arrives in the shady part of the town where he finds himself captured. As the wicked humans throw Letty in a lockup, he tells Pip to leave him and make his escape, but instead of listening to his father, Pip motivates Letty to fight back. Fired up, Letty ignores all the threats he had been given by his captors and makes an attempt to break free. While trying to destroy the prison, an unfortunate-looking Orobas catches him and tells Letty to pipe down, but the scared dragon begs him to not turn him into cool weaponry. Confused by Letty's behavior, the Orobas asks him if he needs food for the youngling. Seizing this opportunity, Letty tells the horse how he needs to get out of the jail as someone is waiting on him. The Orobas smoothly opens the door, revealing that it had been unlocked the whole time. He tells Letty that if he wants to leave so badly, he can. However, before going, he should meet the others. This scares Letty, who wonders if on the other side of the door, an oiled-up big black wolf is waiting to pounce and ravish his rear end. As the Orobas opens the door to another cell, Letty discovers a bunch of unimpressive criminals and relaxes. Upon being introduced to everyone, Letty learns that the Orobas is known as Steve. During his conversation with the Orobas, Letty gets to know that they are all captives. He asks Steve if he has ever tried to leave. The Orobas discloses to him that the dungeon is part of a fighting arena which has its own perks. Unconvinced, Letty tries to tell Steve that they might run into some sort of problem later, but Steve scoffs and shows Letty a jacuzzi. After all, who needs freedom when you can have a jacuzzi? After that, he takes Letty to a gym room, revealing that he will never have to worry about becoming a fat loser like him since he can work out anytime he wants to. And for entertainment, they have a top-class theater. Upon touring the dungeon, Letty realizes that these ugly side characters are living a better life compared to him. Shaking away the negative thoughts, Letty reminds himself that the anime is still named after him. The ringing of a bell catches everyone's attention as a jailer orders Letty to get ready for his fight with the undead skeletons. Before having a chance to bombard Steve with questions, Letty is brought to an arena where an announcer energetically greets the audience and reveals that for today's show, the army of the undead will face a dragon. As Letty appears in the arena, he is chased by the skeleton brothers. Turning to run to the other side, Letty accidentally hits the skeletons with his tail, defeating them all. Returning to the dungeon, Letty finds the skeleton brothers alive and well. Noticing Letty's surprised face, Steve tells him that their shows are scripted, revealing that they base their matches on the betting odds to ensure the house makes a killer profit. Their conversation comes to an end when Steve leaves Letty, reminding him that humans and monsters can coexist. Later, Letty arrives and finds Pip's crib empty, causing him to spiral into panic. In his frantic state, a jailer takes Letty to Pip, revealing that when he was in the arena, he ordered ice for Pip. In that moment, Letty finds himself recalling Steve's words. Having found Pip, Letty tries to get a shut-eye when he wonders what Dirya must be doing without him. Back in the marketplace, Dirya enjoys his life to the fullest. He enters a drinking competition and defeats everyone. After 10 days, Letty becomes annoyed when Dirya doesn't show up to save him. All of a sudden, the jailers arrive and inform the monsters that the Margrave has died and his eldest son now wants everyone euthanized. Before Letty can go off the rails, the monsters prepare an escape plan. As the angels of death arrive to kill them, they successfully ruin their plans. However, just as Letty's group is about to make an escape, they find themselves surrounded by a group of soldiers. Before they can harm Letty or the monsters, Dirya arrives and puts them under a sleeping spell. After arriving at a safe location, Steve and the rest of the monsters decide to become a traveling circus while Letty resumes his journey with Dirya. During their journey, Letty yawns and tells Dirya that lately he hasn't been getting enough sleep. Seeing the dragon twitch with sleep, Dirya asks Letty to get some shut-eye. With that, Letty grabs a pillow and drifts to a land where he's traveling with a female demon lord with massive plots. In the meantime, Pip spots a bird flying in the sky and asks Dirya if he can go play. After telling the chick to be wary of strangers, Dirya allows Pip to wander in the forest. As Pip explores the forest on his own for the first time, he comes across a sad little man. Seeing the man weep, Pip decides to stick his nose in his business and asks the man why he's crying. The man introduces himself as Mr. Leprechaun, revealing how he once lived in a shoe until a passing hero crushed it with his foot and then tossed the shoe in a river, leaving him and his friends homeless. After hearing Mr. Leprechaun's sad story, Pip tells him that he'll help them, revealing how his father is also looking for a home. Confused as to why a dragon would need a home, Mr. Leprechaun curiously inquires Pip why his father is looking for a home. In response, Pip proudly reveals that it's all part of his father's world domination plan. After their conversation, Pip carries Mr. Leprechaun and helps him get reunited with his loser friend. Just when the two leprechauns express their wish of staying in an old leather shoe, Pip spots a hero wearing leather shoes. Being born with big balls of steel, Pip tells them that they'll try to hijack the hero's shoe. This causes the leprechauns to worry, as they tell Pip that if they try to steal a hero's shoe, they will end up headless in a ditch. However, Pip assures them that everything will be fine. With a goal in mind, Pip hops on a tree and directs an army of worms towards the heroes, causing them to run in panic. Amidst the chaos, one of the heroes leaves behind his shoe, which the leprechauns quickly claim as their new home. Hearing Letty's voice, Pip rushes into his father's loving arms. Afterwards, Letty complains to Dirya that he shouldn't have allowed his precious son to wander in the forest. To which, Dirya reveals that when he was growing up, he was constantly facing bloodthirsty beings. Curiously, Letty asks him why he was living in such a dangerous environment. Dirya tells him that he apprenticed with a master who lived in the wilderness. Upon learning that Dirya had a whole childhood, Letty, who had previously believed that no hole in the world would have been strong enough to birth the demon lord, and that he had just spawned into existence, asks Dirya more about his life. After coming to know that elves are socially autistic, a toothy smile forms on Letty's mouth. He tells Dirya that he can't imagine him as a normal little boy. Noticing Pip and Letty's eager look, Dirya sighs and tells them about his childhood. 1,000 years ago, in his pursuit of knowledge, Dirya had attempted to build himself a library in the old Yggdrasil tree. However, after failing, the boomer elves sent him abroad to study under a giant serpent known to be as old as the Yggdrasil tree. After enduring a tiring journey, Dirya is greeted by the serpent, Jormungandr, who becomes his master for years to come. However, Dirya constantly faces the problem of having his house wrecked by the unsuspecting serpent. This prompts Dirya to develop an interest in building houses. With the Grey sisters lending him materials, Dirya is eventually able to construct a perfect house after several failed attempts. After leaving his master's protective care, Dirya goes on to becoming the Demon Lord and encounters a black dragon with a negative IQ named Varney. Stunned to see the mighty black dragon stutter like a socially awkward wanker, Dirya tells Varney to relax, which only escalates his anxiety. After calming down, Varney observes the elf and wonders if the trap-like man is truly the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, Dirya tries to escape by telling Varney that he's not the Demon Lord, but Varney refuses to give up and tells Dirya that he desperately needs help. As Dirya observes Varney's appearance, he realizes that he is the same black dragon that the heroes have placed a bounty on. After boasting about his own abilities, Varney begs Dirya to help him find a property, but the Demon Lord suggests he consider talking to a real estate agent, unlike himself. This infuriates Varney, who scowls at Dirya and accuses him of rudely dismissing him despite his polite approach. Unbothered by Varney's attempt to intimidate him, Dirya tells him that this isn't the way to ask for help. Varney then changes his approach and rolls on the ground, begging for help. Seeing a mighty creature like him embarrass his kind, Dirya gets secondhand embarrassment when Jormungandr spawns out of nowhere. She urges Dirya to help Varney, stating that he came all the way to specifically request his assistance. And so to further the plot, Dirya reluctantly agrees to help Varney. Arriving at the Kurz Fortress, also known as the Hero Guild Fortress, Dirya asks why Varney needs a property there. Varney reveals that since he can't spawn a house out of his rear end like a true demon lord, they'll just have to hijack some pathetic human's property. Displeased by the idea, Dirya turns to leave when Varney cleverly tells him that he'll inform their teacher about his refusal to help. In the end, Dirya reluctantly submits to Varney's plan and enters the guild in FBI style. As the crowd frantically tries to escape, Varney announces that he may be a scoundrel, but he has morals. He asks all the pretty ladies to leave so he can rid the world of ugly girls with huge backs and men with receding hairlines. After his declaration, Varney unleashes his flames, burning the aesthetically unpleasing individuals present in front of him. However, determined to salvage their reputation, the heroes try to fight back. Dirya steps in and uses his magic to disarm them, prompting Varney to cheer for him. He proudly reveals to everyone that he's the big bad Demon Lord. This terrifies all the heroes, as the Demon Lord had just become a legend of the past. After taking care of the pesky humans, Diria turns to leave. He tells Varney that since he'll be making the fortress his home, his job is done. But on that note, Varney cheerfully reveals how he wants to check out a property on the beach. Frustrated by Varney's antics and constant disrespect, Diria tells him that he despises creatures like him, but Varney retorts back, telling Diria to save the yapping for his blue-haired therapist. After arguing like two married couples, Diria advises Varney that they should simply build a house that is dragon-friendly. Convinced by the idea, Varney curiously asks him what he has in mind. The Demon Lord reveals that he'll get some materials from his friends and then have him jump on them to see if they can withstand his weight. However, Varney tells Diria that they shouldn't bother his friends when they can simply use the NPCs. Having said enough, Varney and Diria embark on an adventure, breaking multiple fortresses to test if they can endure a dragon's might. After conducting extensive research, Diria reveals that it is impossible for a dragon to live in a place built for humans. Concluding, Diria suggests to Varney that they should pay the dwarves to build a huge mansion for him. However, Varney reminds him that there's a slight hiccup in his plan, as dwarves are known to loathe dragons. Their conversation is cut short when Varney impulsively attacks another fortress for no reason whatsoever. However, this time, Diria refuses to help him out, which upsets Varney. As he tries to verbally assault the Demon Lord, Diria retorts back, calling him a homeless loser. During their roast session, a couple of humans lose their lives, but that's okay as Diria learns from Varney that it's their job as the top GS to protect the monsters from bloodthirsty heroes. After calming his anger towards Varney, Diria asks him why he wants a house. The dragon reveals that he's getting older and hasn't yet clapped a female dragon. If only he had a house of his own, then he would be happily settled with a family of his own. As Diria realizes that Varney wants him to help those inferior to him in terms of strength, he laughs and promises the dragon to do his best. Relieved by this, Varney flies away, in hopes of finding a home to rest. In the present, Diria finds both Pip and Letty exhausted and tells them that he will recap another 100 years of his life in another video. As Diria's misfortune would have it, Hunter Huey stumbles upon his footprint, and makes it his life mission to hunt him down. He recalls how a few months prior, he had just finished a job which involved stealing a dragon's egg and was camped outside by the Zarada mines when he first encountered the red dragon. Seeing the dragon act like a complete soy boy, Huey comes to the conclusion that he must be a new species of the red dragon. With Letty being unable to fight or fly, Huey excitedly tells Albert, his partner in crime, that they'll have his hide the next time they spot him. After that, the two hunters devote their lives to finding Letty. They arrive at the Temple of Fall in hopes of catching Letty, but discover that the dragon had already left. This upsets Albert, who tells Huey that they should just rob the temple, but Huey reminds him that they're scums with morals. They can only steal when a job requires it. Seeing the footprints leading to the Forest of the Dead, Huey becomes frightened, but Albert reassures him that all the ghost stories about the forest are as fake as the love of an Instagram influencer for a middle-aged man with a yacht. However, the thought of entering a dead forest doesn't sit right with the hunter, and so they end up finding a different route which leads them to the house on the hills. While observing the house, Huey wonders if a dragon truly lives in such a civilized fashion. This upsets Albert, who tells Huey not to make racist stereotypes. He reminds him that the Grey sisters gave them the map, stating that they will find the dragon using it. As Huey prepares himself for the invasion, he is reminded of his morals. He tells Albert that he can only invade two things, his mom and a lair. After hearing that terrible mom joke, Albert decides to take a breather and asks Huey to join him. As they relax, they spot heroes entering the house with ease. Intrigued, the hunters peep in and witness the heroes being attacked by monsters. The monsters reveal that their boss, the Flame Dragon Lord, is currently busy with his world domination plan. After hearing the tale of the Red Dragon's might, Huey and Albert rush to the nearest guild. They warn the adventurers about the Flame Dragon Lord and his wicked plan of world domination, causing them all to panic. And so, the rumors of Letty being a dragon Chad spread like wildfire. The next day, Huey and Albert wait to ambush Letty when they discover him breathing fire upon a group of bandits. Terrified, the two hunters decide to retreat and hunt the dragon another time. In reality, it had been the Demon Lord's magic that had toasted the bandits. After eliminating their enemies, Letty and Diria search through their goods when they come across a tied-up human girl in one of the boxes. As the girl stirs awake, she accuses Letty and Diria of kidnapping her, revealing that she's the daughter of a man with an exceptionally long name. Stepping in, Diria assures Nell that Letty wouldn't kidnap an ugly girl like her. Trusting Diria's words, Nell confides in him that she has run away from home and seeks a place to lay low from those pursuing her. As Diria teleports them to a cave, Nell expresses her desire for a bath. Diria attempts to fulfill Nell's wish but fails. In the end, Letty boils water for Nell to bathe in. With her nerves soothed, Nell reveals that she ran from home because her father ate her cupcake without asking her. Suddenly, a group of heroes arrive, accusing Letty of kidnapping the princess. Before they can apprehend Letty, Diria arrives and deals with them. Later, Letty invites Nell to travel with them until she feels ready to return home. With a smile, Nell agrees but quickly reverts to her bratty self. The next day, Diria is seen babysitting Nell. He asks if she slept well, and the princess proudly reveals that she has gotten used to camping out, while putting the queen-size bed back in Diria's satchel. Changing the topic, Nell asks him why Letty has been acting out but then assumes that it's because Letty needs to lay eggs. Hearing this, Letty yells at Nell, reminding her that he's a man. Diria steps in and tells the princess that Letty's on edge because he asked him to decide which property he'd like to tour next. Before Nell can talk sense into the big lizard, a djinn named Nashim arrives. He reveals that he's a tax counselor with the non-human Internal Revenue Service and has come to inquire about Letty's unpaid income taxes. He further explains that since Letty has left his parents' house, he's now obligated to pay taxes. The subject of taxes confuses Letty, as he only remembers studying about mitochondria being the powerhouse of a cell in school. Sighing, Nashim decides to help Letty and takes him to file taxes. After handing him the form, Nashim informs Letty that he needs to write about his jobs. During this time, Nell manages to see his status card and mocks Letty for being such a pathetic loser of a dragon. Returning with his form, Nashim tells Letty that he's eligible to apply for a child allowance. After discussing everything, Letty turns to leave when Diria and Nashim talk about different kinds of taxes that Letty needs to pay. In that moment, Letty realizes that he can hear Diria and Nashim speak but can't comprehend a single thing that they have said in the past minute. After waking up from his mini coma, Letty is informed by Nell that she and Pip went ahead and picked a property for him to tour. Diria joins their conversation and reveals that the property is located in the royal city. Realizing they're completely doomed now, Nell and Letty anxiously make their way through the sewers. As they arrive at the underground dungeon, Nell realizes it's the same dungeon that's used for training heroes. This surprises Letty, but Diria catches on quickly. He explains that since monsters are known to live in dungeons, the king decided to build a training compound for the heroes to practice with real-life monsters. To conclude, Diria tells Letty that if he chooses to live in this dungeon, he would become a public servant, but Letty realizes on his own that he wouldn't live long to see another day if he stays here. As Nell and Pip excitedly head to explore the dungeon, Letty follows reluctantly. After being unsuccessful at locating a coffin of gold in the middle of the hallway, Nell realizes that everything she has known about the dungeons is fake. Despite knowing that her life is a lie, she decides to proceed on. Along the way, the gang encounters many monsters until they finally arrive at the front of the boss area. However, when Letty is unable to open the door, Diria reveals that they'll need necessary items to proceed. Hearing this, Letty senses that the dungeon looks awfully familiar. Diria informs him that the dungeon was crafted by the man who created the Temple of Fall. Unimpressed by the information, Letty, Nell, and Pip locate the key to open the door, but then suddenly, the ceiling starts to close down on them. During this moment, Pip locates a hidden door which leads the group to the royal castle, much to Nell's annoyance. Believing that Letty, now notoriously known as the Flame Dragon Lord, is holding the princess hostage, the knights surround him, ready to take him down. Meanwhile, Letty racks his head, trying to find the reason why he's in this situation. Diria quickly helps him recap, revealing that after he entered the castle, he ran into a group of heroes whom he took care of with his magic. However, the humans interpreted this situation as the Flame Dragon attempting to hijack the castle, which led to their current predicament. As Letty wonders if the situation could get any worse, Diria reveals that the king believes he has kidnapped Nell. Hearing this, Letty asks Nell to clear out the misunderstanding, but the brat shuts him down by saying that she will not be talking to her father until he apologizes to her for eating her cupcake. Sighing, he turns to Diria and asks him to just teleport them out, but the demon lord reveals that they can't do that as the castle is warded against teleportation magic. Being the only one with brains, Dirya announces that they will be building their own line of defense. He sends Pip to eliminate the guards through his deathly scream while they seal off all the outer gates. With all the important access points under their control, Nell and Pip begin to celebrate. Meanwhile, Dirya announces the next phase of their plan is taking countermeasures. However, before Nell can join Dirya, Letty tells her to stay back, reminding her that they'll be fighting against her dad after all. Annoyed, Nell reveals that she's going to flip the script and give her father-daughter issues. This will be a tribute to all the blue-haired girls with daddy issues. The princess further tells Letty that she won't be able to forgive herself if she leaves her friends in a time of need. Respecting Nell's decision, Letty joins Dirya as they prepare to attack. Dirya calls upon the gnomes, who assist them in hurling rocks at the royal army's vanguards. Witnessing the battle tip in their favor, Nell confidently predicts that her father will soon order the army to retreat. However, as the day transitions into evening, Nell and Letty grow exhausted while awaiting the army's withdrawal. Finally, Nell breaks down and curses Dirya for allowing the gnomes to return home. Dirya defends his actions, emphasizing his commitment to treating his employees with respect. Seeking a new strategy, Dirya decides to use the portcullis to trap the soldiers. Unfortunately, their plan falters when the soldiers begin scaling the walls. With no way out, the king appeals to the flame dragon, urging him to return his daughter unharmed. Witnessing Nell's tears prompts Letty to realize that it's time for the father and daughter to reconcile. With Dirya's assistance, Letty lures the king into a room where he finds Nell and embraces her. In the meantime, Letty tells Dirya how he has finally realized that his father kicked him out for his own betterment. This makes Dirya smile proudly. After reconciling with his daughter, the king recognizes Letty as the true victim in the situation and apologizes to him. He asks Letty if he wants a place in the dungeon, but Letty hesitantly tells him that he'd like to look for another place after all the fiasco. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the king offers Letty some fairy dust, enabling him to fly. Meanwhile, Nell presents Letty with a fragment of a fairy stone, keeping the other half for herself. She explains that this connection will always bind them together. After bidding farewell to his newfound friend, Letty takes to the skies. As he flies, memories flood back to him. Recalling the first time he experienced the world from above was when he was sitting on top of his father's head. In the records of history, this event would be remembered as the moment Letty was captivated by the princess's beauty, leading him to vow never to harm the city that housed his princess. And that brings us to the end of the anime. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and leave your comments down below because I read all of them. Until next time, take care.